Welcome to Curitics Conversations, a discussion with leaders who spent decades building, scaling, and fixing some of the most complex parts of healthcare. I'm your co-host, John Gorman, here with my dear friend, Unmesh Srivastava, and a very special guest for all of us today. We're going to be diving into how Medicare Advantage plans really operate, from cost, quality, and access trade-offs to the operational challenges of integration across care and utilization management. And today we are joined by an absolute legend in our industry that we're so thrilled to have with us, seeing healthcare from literally every angle, from government to the provider side, payer, operator, strategist, and exceptive leader.
Don't
Dr.
forget
Sachin Jain.
biopharma too. Biopharma,
And
managed care, government. Yeah.
well, that's the part. So Sachin Jain is with us. Unmesh, let me let you add a quick word before we have Sachin introduce himself.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very excited for this conversation. My name is Unmesh Srivastava. I'm a managing partner over at Curitics Health, and I've been an avid follower of Sachin's journey for almost 15 years when I was budding up and growing in the corporate, and also been following the scan journey very closely and how Sachin has scaled it, not just from a size perspective, but also touch so many different areas. It's not just a pair, it's one of the top most innovative pairs in the country doing all kinds of things. So I'm very excited to learn, and I'm very excited to uncover a lot of that in
Well,
today's.
thank you both for the kind words. I will share this introduction with my mom, who will be proud to hear it all. So thank you.
Great. Well, Sachin, usually we like to let our guests introduce themselves in their own words. So please go ahead and share with us, your background and some of the roles and the accomplishments that have defined your career.
Well, an honor to be with you both. I would say, I've spent most of my career trying to figure out how to make healthcare better. And, I think, I'm still relatively young in my career, but I would say I feel like I have a lot of miles on my body. I feel like I've been in a lot of rooms, I've seen a
Yeah.
lot of things. I feel like I got old really fast seeing things. And, John, you spent early in your career, you were at CMS. I too was early.
Yeah.
I was, I think, 29 years old when I was working at ONC and then subsequently CMS. And it was really a remarkable exposure into, the US healthcare landscape. And, I think when you're early in your career, you think that there's like a Wizard of Oz who like has it all known and has it all figured out.
Yeah.
And you also think that like these wizards have some grand plan towards which they're driving US healthcare. And I guess I was lucky early enough in my career to spend time with a lot of the wizards, both, working for some of the, real superstars of the previous generation. And then subsequently, just going to lots of different industry forums and meetings. And what you quickly realize is that no one really has the answer. Or we have the answer, but a lot of times the reason we're not moving things forward is a combination of politics, organizational dysfunction, and bad leadership. And I've really spent the last several years really pivoting my thesis away from where it started, which was like we need better policies and better programs, to where I am today, which is that we need better leadership.
Yeah.
Because the policies and programs have actually all come. We've had value-based care instruments in the US since, you and your colleagues were getting the MA program launched, John. What has not happened has been using these programs for good in the way that we can. And so a lot of what I've been trying to do both at CareMore and Scan is to really try to create platforms where we make a real difference in the lives of the people we serve. We do so in both little ways as well as big ways, through programmatic innovation, as well as through like new models of care altogether.
Yeah.
And I think it's been a tremendous amount of fun, and I feel like I've learned a lot, and hopefully have contributed a little. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
I think we all generally regard you, Sachin, as the thought leader in Medicare Advantage and in government programs generally. What were some of the more formative experiences that shaped how you think about healthcare and leadership today?
So I was a undergraduate student. I had an internship worked out at the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, John, and you know OSTP well.
Yep.
A week before I was supposed to go to DC for this prestigious White House internship, I get a phone call from the Kennedy School who had arranged the internship, and they said, um, "There's no internship," and they pulled the rug. George Bush had just been elected president. The Kennedy School didn't have as strong a relationship with the Bush administration as they did with the Clinton administration, and so the internship kind of evaporated before my eyes. Turned out to be one of the luckiest breaks of my life, which is, I picked up the phone and I called my college professor, Don Berwick, and I said, Don, can I come and hang out with you for the summer? And Don, as gracious as he is, said, sure, come on in. We'll set you up with an internship. And they were just launching something called Pursuing Perfection, which was a $21.6 million initiative. At the time, that was really big money initiative to develop prototypes for perfect care in the United States,
Hmm.
in collaboration with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And this was a big deal program, and lots of names were sitting around the advisory committee. It was like Bob Brook and it was Bob Galvin, and we were going to visit like big time health systems that were trying to develop quote unquote prototypes of perfect care. And, I remember going to Minnesota with Don to go meet with George Halverson when he was running Health Partners. And, it was like I was getting a tour of like the best and the brightest thinking in this field. And I think the output of it was that they selected 8 organizations and they developed these prototypes, and then nothing really happened. and, and it was the first, kind of I would see in my career of like where big hopes are kind of followed by a loud boom of nothingness. And that was the first time I saw it, and I couldn't really like place it or contextualize it. 5 years later, I'm in business school at Harvard Business School, and the recruiters are coming around from Revolution Healthcare. I don't know if you remember Revolution, John, but
Yep.
Revolution Healthcare was Steve Case's Manhattan Project to fix American healthcare, and at that time, it was $250 million. And I elected not to pursue the internship there, but I followed the Revolution story for several years, and boom, nothing happened. Fast forward, Bezos, Buffett, Diamond get together, they launch Haven.
Yep.
More hope, than anyone ever imagined, could exist in the in our ecosystem. Like if companies like Amazon, JP Morgan, and Berkshire Hathaway can't do it, then no one can. And, 4 years later, boom, the thing kind of, completely disintegrates. And so what you realize is like, we're in the middle of this kind of epic, transformation journey, crisis in our industry. The best and brightest minds of every generation have kind of put, major effort into and major dollars into trying to fix it, and they haven't been able to fix it. And so it's very humbling on some level. It's very humbling on some
Yeah.
level, but it also makes you think maybe we need something different, right? Like if traditional approaches haven't worked, then we need to think about this whole space really differently. And my push is that, and we sit in rooms all the time where people blame everyone else for their problems. They blame pharma, they blame incentives, they blame, managed care, they blame health systems, they blame doctors, they blame technologists. We have to all look inward in a way that we haven't before and ask the question, how am I contributing to the pathology that exists? How am I contributing to making healthcare worse and not better? And if we started looking at ourselves really honestly and we got out of this toxic positivity, I think that's going to be the unlock. And maybe I'll be here 5 years from now and I'll tell you that I've moved on to something else. But I do think that as you travel the healthcare ecosystem, you know, everyone goes from their very lofty ambitions to just wanting to get theirs. And that's a problem. That's what
Yeah.
we have to fix.
Yeah. It always reminds me of how we call Afghanistan the graveyard of empires. And it's like this industry has become the graveyard of hopes and dreams of strategists and innovators. And it's just where, big ideas go to die.
I mean, the truth is that we've known what we need to do for a really long time. We need to move care away from inpatient settings to outpatient settings. We
Yep.
need to cut costs. We need to imagine a smaller industry, not a bigger industry. We need to reward organizations on outcomes and not revenues. But for whatever reason, we've treated healthcare like it's every other industry. And so we think it's getting better when the top line grows and the bottom line grows. And, in an industry where we have, where there's human life interfacing with not-for-profit governance, I would expect that we would arrive at like some different solutions than we have.
Yeah, I agree. Now, back to formative moments. You've always been very forthright about your mentors and who you felt you owed, how you've gotten so far in this industry and how you approach it. Liba Lesson, obviously, one of the senior executives at Caremore, was one of your favorite mentors. What was a formative experience from your time with Liba?
Oh my God. Look, I think Liba is one of a kind. She's like a
He was.
singular intellect, a singular talent, and actually like totally unrecognized. I mean, she didn't do the speaker circuit.
No.
She wasn't giving $30,000 keynotes, like, some of the big quote unquote thought leaders in healthcare. She was somebody who measured herself by like distinctive impact on human beings and both patients as well as the people she worked with. And, I always tell the story about Liba. She was just retiring from Caremore. She just passed the baton on to me. We went to one of our care centers. It was the Upland, California Care Center. And as we're walking out of the building, the receptionist calls out to Liba and says, "Liba, can we have a fish tank for the waiting area?" And she said, "Sure, we can." And we walked out of the building and she said, "What did I just do there?" And I said, "You told her we could get a fish tank for the waiting area." And she says, "No, I told her that her voice matters." And in healthcare, instinctively, we say no way more than we say yes.
Yeah.
And we teach people over time to quiet the voice inside of their heads about how things can be better. And we numb people and we rob them of their agency and their belief that they can actually have a voice in an organization. And as a result, we are actually eroding employee goodwill from the balance sheet. And this story, I think symbolized everything that, she really represented, which was to think about people as people instead of, commoditizing a workforce like so many corporations do. I mean, my least favorite word in corporate America is resources. I mean, we talk about human beings as resources.
Yeah.
WTF, guys? Like, oh, I've got a great resource. No, I've got a great human, a great person, a great woman, a great man. We literally call people resources like they're widgets. And it's only getting worse now in the AI era, where we really feel people like are fungible and replaceable. And that spirit is, I think really has come to pervade managed care in pretty nefarious ways, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. What a great example, Sachin. Thank you. We almost called this podcast Curitics Confessions because we love our guests to share a personal war story, a moment in a career where something went really wrong, broke down, forced a major reckoning. Could be an operational failure, a leadership moment under pressure, system that didn't work out the way that it was supposed to. Tell us a war story that from your
So
career.
I've never talked about this
Wow.
on record, but today's the day.
Hey,
So you're getting what you asked for.
thank you.
Many people forget that Caremore was both a health plan and a delivery model.
Yeah.
And I think the single decision that really kind of set that organization back was the decision to break the health plan away from the delivery model. And in a time when organizations were integrating health plan and delivery model,
Yeah.
the powers that were kind of above me made the decision that for a variety of, kind of reasons, they wanted to merge Caremore's health plan in with Anthem's health plans. And it, you know, essentially to kind of get the benefit of, in the short term, of CareMore's very high star ratings. In California, we had a 4.5 star rating. In Nevada, we had a 4 star rating. In Arizona, we had a 4 star rating, and in Virginia, we had a 4.5 star rating. So there's this little policy loophole called novation,
Yeah.
wherein you can merge two health plans and then get the revenue that's associated with the higher star rating. Kind of a crazy thing that CMS ever allowed plans to do this.
Yeah.
And so CareMore's health plans all got novated in with Anthem's health plans. And in doing so, got blended with a lot of other delivery models. And, in high touch, high cost models focused on high touch, on high cost patients, rather, really require a lot of revenue. And so suddenly, these models, which were performing extremely well when you had a lot of revenue associated with them because you had the high star ratings, didn't have that revenue anymore. And I think it set that organization back in ways that were pretty profound. And so I think about that as being, and I fought it, and Liba had fought similar decisions previously, and had succeeded, but there was the corporations sometimes think so short term, and I think it's one of the reasons why so many people have so many problems with publicly traded healthcare, which is that they oftentimes make a decision for the quarter or the year and not for the long run.
Right.
That it was kind of a cautionary tale that when you're leading a healthcare organization, you should be thinking in 10 or 20-year horizons, not 1 or 2 year horizons. And, one of my, kind of inspirations in that regard is Tom Prisolak, who ran Cedars-Sinai for, 3 decades. And if today people talk about Cedars-Sinai as like the hospital for the stars and like one of America's 10 best health systems. Most people don't know that when Tom inherited it in 1989, it was a local community hospital. And he built it into a powerhouse through just a combination of long-term vision and deliberate effort. And again, I think it takes a long time in healthcare to build these legacy organizations. And it takes a very short time and very poor leadership decision making to actually break these like really proud organizations. And you see that when you have kind of suboptimal leaders who are thinking short term, in organizations, they make these decisions, and these companies and these models that are super well functioning kind of disappear. And you can name them, right? Healthcare Partners was a remarkable organization that went through a lot of churn and challenge, kind of through its acquisition by DaVita and divestiture. So again, I think that there's a lot of these kind of instances where, and I'll say a lot of bad leadership decision making where people don't really understand the thing that they're trying to change
Yeah.
before they actually change it. That's another Libaism. Understand the thing you're trying to change before you actually change it. But there's so much reflexive corporate decision making. And, Unmesh, John, you've been around it. Like the new HR leader comes in, they want to put a stamp on things. They don't really take the time to really understand it. They just want to like do something.
Yeah.
Finance leader, they want to just do something. They want to look like they're taking action. And, I hope the listening audience kind of recognizes the phenomenon I'm talking about. It's like the thoughtless new corporate leader who you think may know more, but actually like doesn't take the time to really understand, and then quickly like everything's broken, and then we spend years digging out from it. It's one of the reasons I think we just need to pay way more attention to the people aspect inside of all healthcare organizations, because the wrong leader, the wrong hire can set you back years, and you see it happen every single day.
It's a wonderful point, Sachin, and really illustrative of the choice I think most of the provider sponsored plans in the middle market are facing right now. We just had Cece Connolly, the CEO of the Alliance of Community Health Plans, on, and I'm really struck by your war story there. That the provider sponsored systems really seem, when times get rough like they are now, going back in the opposite direction, away from integration and
Well,
more
it
toward.
brings me to our Sutter partnership, which is a big deal for us at Scan.
Yeah.
We were selected as, kind of a semi-exclusive MA provider partner, joint venture partner with them. We grew 20,000 lives with them this past year. Pretty exciting. For those of you who don't track MA plans. I mean, that's pretty wild to grow 20,000 in 1 year with, one partner.
With one partner. Yeah.
And I think we built a model there that we invite any, delivery system in the country to engage with us about, where, you know, they as a health system can help choose the benefits. They can help choose, the entire design of the plan, and design the economic model around the plan,
Yep.
so that they have more control. And I think there's a long history of plans, both startup plans as well as legacy plans, fleecing providers. I mean, I'm just going to call it what it is,
Yeah.
through engaging non-transparently, by, playing with the division of financial responsibility, playing with the fact that MA is just one line of business for these large complex systems, playing with the fact that in year one you have like zero membership. So even if you give someone a bad deal, it takes them 3 or 4 years to figure out that they've got a bad deal, and they're left holding the bag. And so a lot of the so-called, miracles in the healthcare startup ecosystem weren't anything other than kind of predatory schemes
And
from
price.
pricing schemes with, health systems or medical groups that didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And they were preying on ignorance. And I think what's happening right now is there's a reversal, which is smart operators like Warner Thomas, who leads, Sutter, are saying things like, "Hey, we know we can win with MA, but we've got to have a little bit more control than we've had before."
Yeah.
And so again, that's a playbook we're taking to delivery systems all over our geographies as well as new potential geographies, which is like, let's build something together. This is our core business, but you should have control, which I think is a lot better than the provider sponsored health plan world from before.
Yeah.
Because, the truth is that it's a different business altogether. And I think sometimes, like, you see this where healthcare organizations will give, responsibility for the health plan to an incumbent health system executive as a quote unquote rotational experience. It's like suggesting that a primary care doctor do thoracic surgery.
And I was just going
Should
to say
should
that.
never should never happen. Should never
Yeah.
happen. But health
Yeah.
systems engage in this form of kind of management malpractice, where they take, Joe, who's a really good nursing executive, and they make Joe the head of the health plan because they happen to be a good nursing executive. It's kind of crazy talk. And then they wonder 3 years later why it wasn't working.
Okay.
And so again, I think that there's an opportunity for delivery systems to play in the health plan world, to be a partner, to be an owner, to be, a shaper at the table.
Yeah.
And I think we have to get away from the world where health systems and health plans were sitting on opposite sides of the table, arguing about who gets more from a fixed pie, and instead have them sitting on the same side of the table, talking about how to grow the pie. That's the world we have to go to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you just achieved something incredible in this last AEP, which is, and check,
127,000 lives.
I was
127,000
going to say
lives.
130,000 lives was
Yep.
what I,
Yep.
and these types of provider sponsorships or partnerships like you did with Sutter that got you there?
100%. I mean, the truth is that health plans are going to health systems, and they're literally, viewing it as a fixed pie. And they say, if I, I win, you lose, I win. Um, Instead, we said, how do we both win together? And I basically challenged some of these health systems to get out of the promiscuous world. And what I mean by that is, managed care is a highly promiscuous industry. Everyone partners with everyone. Everyone says everyone's their best friend, and that extends to the brokers. It extends to the health plans. It extends to the delivery systems. And when you are operating in this highly promiscuous way, you miss out on the benefits of monogamy. And the
Right.
benefits of monogamy, as a guy who was recently married, a couple of years ago, first time, hopefully the only time, are that you are in it with someone and you have to work through your problems. You have to partner in a way where you both win. And you're thinking long term, not short term. And what happens when you are in these 1 year provider relationships where they get renegotiated every year, every other year, whatever it is you start thinking short term, and you start thinking about, how do I solve my problems by sticking it to John, as opposed to thinking, how do I ensure that John and I have the kind of relationship that's still going to work for 10 or 20 years? And so, we believe that brokers should be selling one or two health plans at most. We believe provider organizations should be partnered with one or two health plans at most. And the world over the last 10 years was like, oh, everyone partners with everybody. Most people end up unhappy when, even despite of how exciting that sounds.
Polyamory work.
Not even once, right?
Right.
Short term, short term. So the point is like, let's get real about what really works. Let's be long term. Let's be focused on, you know, really truly win-win partnerships. We've now signed a couple of partnerships that are 10-year partnerships. Our relationship with Astrana
Wow.
Health.
Right.
Astrana is an amazing organization focused on East Asian and Latino populations
Yep.
in California and Nevada and Texas and a host of other geographies. And Ken Sim, their founder, and Brandon Sim, their CEO, we sat down and said, like, let's do this the right way. Let's build off of the real shared trust that we think we have between our organizations. And like, let's think about 10 years and let's get you at the table helping to design our plans and our benefits with us. And that was a function of, I have to give credit to Mario Molina, industry legend. Talk about legendary people in our
Yeah.
industry.
Yeah.
Mario said, "Hey, Sachin, I know you and I know Ken. Like, you guys are a marriage like that is waiting to be made." And I listened to almost everything Mario says. I drove over to see Ken a couple of days later, and we built this long-term relationship. And again, I think in healthcare where you've got these lots of fly-by-night operations that are interested in you know short-term arbitrage opportunities, we're thinking about how do you build long-term value.
Love it.
Great.
Love it.
Right.
Unmesh, over to you.
Yes. I'll quickly jump in. Sachin, you talked about innovation with what you did at CareMore, which was remarkable, integrated insurance and care delivery. SCAN is a very innovative organization. I actually look forward every quarter on hearing what's coming out new, right? I sent you a picture of when I saw SCAN's banner in Costco, and then it's amazing because it's in many ways is the pioneer doing this. The homeless medical groups, PACE, you're building a very unique model of integrated care along with your health plan business. So while you're growing so fast, or with 127, 130K lives additional last AP, being on the forefront of innovation, you're building the plane while you're flying it. As an operator, is there a playbook? A lot of our listeners are, budding executives who want to be CEOs in the future. What's the playbook that you follow to balance out the growth, innovation, and just, pushing along the mission of SCAN?
Look, I'll express some humility here. I am supported by a board that, I think really like believed in the potential of this organization to be more, and made um the w- deliberate choice to allow for failure and to allow for learning. And I think you have to be willing to support failure. And I think it's the most important thing you can do as a leader or in a governance role is to encourage appropriate risk taking. You could look at Scan and you could say, "Oh, Scan's a Southern California company. We had a failed entry into, Arizona in 2015. We should never expand again. And we should never, and all we do well is health plan. We should just focus on health plan. That's a good business." And I will say that, like, there's a lot of work to do to come to agreement, as Chris Wing transitioned the business to me, and, did so very gracefully and very kindly, in 2020. The board made a deliberate choice that they wanted to get into the care delivery space. They wanted to contemplate expansion. They wanted, and they allowed us to do so in ways where we maybe didn't succeed at first, where we made mistakes, where we went through challenging situations, because there was an inherent understanding that as we learned, our collective intelligence as a corporation would increase, and that our odds of success would increase as we go forward, right? And again, I think many organizations just play it incredibly safe, and they just keep doing what they're doing and they expect different results. And again, I'll just give a lot of credit to Cheska Lariziaga, who is my first board chair, Linda Rosenstock, our second, and now Ben Chu, our third, all legends in their own rights. And I think, they assembled a board that really allowed us to kind of take some of these risks and take some of these chances. And I think, we show up differently than other organizations to partners. That's the reason an entity like Costco wanted to work with us, because we show up with an, an eye towards experimentation, innovation, and a willingness to fail. Whereas a lot of organizations miss the moment because they just overplan. And I've always believed, I'm an iterative learner. I've always believed that you learn more by doing and failing than you do by planning and failing.
Yeah.
That's right.
And I think that that's the kind of culture we've tried to create at this organization, is like, let's just do the thing. We introduced a product 4 years ago that almost bankrupted the company. It was the venture product. It was our Part B rebate product, grew 60,000 lives. It was a negative margin product. It was a defensive move that we put in place because WellCare had a very aggressive product in the market. We were losing share to WellCare, and we thought, okay, well, and we mispriced it, and our benefits were too generous across a big network. And guess what? We learned everything we could from that experience. Um, it changed how we think about product design. It changed how we think about pricing. It also allowed us to really look at our cost structure and say, you know what, probably could take out a lot of costs and not hurt anything. And the product went from being negative margin to being, break even margin, because we were able to get our G&A under control. And again, lots of organizations would look at that episode and they say, oh, you didn't plan this properly, or, you know, um, you know, uh, let's punish management for having, you know, done this thing. Instead, our board said, great, what have you learned from this? And,
Right.
I'll cite another great mentor of mine, since you asked me the mentor question, which is Pete
Yeah.
Hytayan, who
Sure.
who was my boss after Liba at Anthem, who, we went through lots of interesting challenges and battles in the company. And he would say to me, like, what did you learn from this? What did you learn from this? What did you learn from this? And I think you kind of constantly have to refine and upgrade your playbook, and have to have a growth mindset. And that's how you get better in this industry, is by actually having a growth mindset. But we have too many tired executives running the same tired plays, and I'll probably end up one of those tired executives one of these days. But
I
the point is, that's why, we tend not to get any better, is we kind of put the same old players running the same old plays in positions of leadership and authority. And, we need to make way for a new generation. I think that's another part of the success we have here at Scan, is we have been a magnet for really A-plus talent.
It's amazing how risk inviting the culture is that you've built there, Sachin, because I always told all of my sales folks, and I've told Unmesh's team as well, like, the biggest risk that you're going to face in dealing in the Medicare Advantage industry is the career risk of the person sitting across the table from you.
Yes.
That nobody wants to take a step or hire a contractor or make a decision that will put their career in danger. And it speaks so much to the culture in the industry, that and how unusual yours is.
Well, we also hold things that are sacred that shouldn't be sacred. I mean, look, let me say the following.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to bet the house on something once in a while, you're not meant to be in charge of anything. I mean, and the truth is that we have too many people who don't make any big bets. They're just riding out their 5 years or 7 years or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons nothing ever gets better. Is people are playing defense, not offense. And the truth is that we have to be willing to bet the farm sometimes, and, like, say to ourselves, if we don't make change, what are we going to be left with? What are
Yeah.
we going to be left with? So that question doesn't get asked enough.
Yeah.
So the
Absolutely.
adag, fail fast, fail cheap. My takeaway is learn fast, learn cheap, learn often, and that's how you move forward. Which is great.
Yeah. Sachin, I was really struck by something you mentioned earlier, that, you want to be in a world where providers have many fewer relationships with payers, that, we're moving more toward monogamy of relationships between
At
payers and
least bigamy. At least bigamy is what I say to
providers.
people.
Big, absolutely, but that polyamory rarely works. You're a master of integration. What does a good integration look like with a major provider partner? How do you get there?
Look, so when you think about a long-term relationship and you think about what is unlocked when you have a 10-year relationship, you could think about having a shared call center. You could think about having a scan geriatric focused ward in a hospital with scan embedded care managers and scan pharmacists who are walking the halls to make sure that people have appropriate discharge and they have their medications waiting for them at home,
Yeah.
or actually leave the hospital with their medications. Uh,
Yeah.
when you're operating as one, and the truth is the patients experience you as one. That's the thing that gets forgotten.
Yeah.
The patients always, when patients come to me and they're like, I have a problem, my doctor, he's not saying, oh, that was an Intermountain doctor in Nevada. He's saying that's a scan doctor. And they really experience it as a choice that we made for them or help them make. So you've got to take responsibility for the whole patient experience. But at the end of the day, it's hard to do that when you as a health system or a medical group have 5, 6, 7 such relationships. You just can't do it. But if you have one or two, you can start to think, how does 1 plus 1 equal 3? As opposed to how does 1 plus 1 equal 1.5, which is how it usually lands for
Yeah.
most patients.
Right. Right. Brilliant. You have always been at the forefront of how we think about innovation in areas like social determinants of health. And I've always hated that phrase. They're basically just four fancy words for poverty and racism and
Yep.
health.
Yep.
But you've actually really reshaped how plans approach care beyond traditional clinical models. For instance, you were the first guy in the industry to figure out how to monetize healthcare for the homeless.
Yep.
I mean, just astounding to me. And what you did together with your street care team was just amazing. Talk a little, if you could, about that experience and what it actually takes operationally to move from recognizing those factors to actually integrating them into care delivery. Because it
Look,
seems like the whole industry is going the opposite direction now that the dollars are tightening.
yeah, look, I think at the end of the day, you gotta have you gotta stand for a few things, right? And I think in healthcare, we don't talk enough about what we actually stand for. And, at SCAN, we're a not-for-profit, like, healthcare organization that's focused on the care of older adults. The fastest growing segment of people experiencing homelessness in Southern California is older adults. So if you say you care about older adults, you have to find a way to make it work. And, the truth is that we spend a lot of dollars in healthcare, in managed care in particular, paying for avoidable hospital admissions. And emergency rooms have become primary care zones for people experiencing homelessness. You walk into any emergency room in LA and you're going to meet I was actually at the VA where I actually see patients yesterday, and you saw people there who are using the emergency room as a primary care office. And it's expensive to get primary care in an emergency room.
Yeah.
And there's an opportunity cost to taking care of people who have outpatient needs in emergency rooms. And so I actually started to look at this problem when I was at CareMore, and when I came to SCAN, I said, we absolutely have to do something about this, which is my teams at CareMore in the Virginia market said, we don't want to enroll people experiencing homelessness. And I said, guys, if we're not taking care of these people, no one's taking care of these people.
Yeah.
Particularly since we're at risk for their care. And these are high RAF members. So the question is like, if these were three, RAF 2 or RAF 3 or RAF 4 kind of members, could we potentially invest significant dollars in an outpatient basis to take care of these folks and avoid the ICU stay and avoid the inpatient admission?
Yeah.
Over time, we pivoted because, California has this enhanced care management provision that allows us to be paid for care navigation services, social care services. So, in addition to the medical billing, we're also doing the social billing. And, last year we saw 6,000 people experiencing homelessness, 5 times or more. So we basically became the de facto street primary care service for
Yeah.
6,000 people experiencing homelessness.
Wow.
That's about a 10% market share because we have about 60,000 people experiencing homelessness in in that service area. So we have basically a 10% primary care market share for people experiencing homelessness. Now, we don't just take care of older adults. We take care of, of anybody who needs our services. But again, I think this idea, managed care principles and street medicine principles need to come together because managed care is all about effective chronic disease management, optimizing the site of care so that you're taking care of people in the lowest cost settings that you can actually take care of them.
Yeah.
And From that arose partnerships with Cedars-Sinai, wherein we take care of, they discharge patients from the emergency room directly to our street medicine teams. We've got partnerships with various cities and municipalities who pick up the phone and call us to take care of people instead of putting them through the criminal justice system, when they're trespassing or residing in places that they shouldn't reside. We have partnerships with, city officials and city agencies around this, so again, but part of it started with the moral clarity. And I keep saying moral clarity because I think it's really important. Like, if you're a not-for-profit healthcare organization that's focused on a thing, then you actually have to be about that thing. And that's my challenge to, fellow leaders in the industry, is to actually be who you say you are. Stop saying that you are about a thing and not actually be about the thing. And that's my encouragement to the listening audience.
Yeah.
I really hate the expression "no margin, no mission," because I think we don't pause enough to really ask, what is that mission that we're serving? And maybe the mission is just like organizational sustenance, and that's not good enough of a mission, actually.
Yeah.
The mission needs to be something bigger than just like, we keep the lights on, because maybe your lights don't deserve to be on. Maybe you shouldn't be like in business, and you should be in a different business.
Sachin, I want to quickly jump in here. I want to talk about the future of MA. There's so many headwinds going on right now. Rate changes, version 28, risk adjustment. There's the margins are squeezing. A lot of players are getting out of Medicare Advantage as well. A lot of national players are getting out of MA as well. How do you see for folks who are building, you know, technology, operations, business processes, or even smaller players, what's
Be the
the
solution. Be the solution. Be the solution. Look, MA, I'm going to be a little bit blunt. MA was a popular business for the last 10 years because of risk adjustment. There was an incredible arbitrage opportunity. You could code, and the way the formulas worked and the way the coding worked, you could get paid more than it cost to actually deliver the services. And that delta was what drove lots of profit-oriented companies to show up and do this work. And what it did is it actually like engaged us in what I call the value-based delusion, which was people believed they were doing value-based care, but they were actually just doing risk adjustment. John and I are old enough to remember that there were a set of organizations that actually used to do real value-based care. They did the basics really well. They did chronic disease management for people with, ambulatory sensitive conditions. They managed transitions of care in and out of acute settings really, really well. They managed the social determinants of health in a common sense way. They gave patients who needed air conditioners, who were getting admitted in summer months for dehydration, they gave them air conditioners. Patients who had falls, they built ramps. We need to go back to that version of MA, which is like how do you actually take care of people? And, to go back to where we started, like Lee Balessin hated the word population health, because what is population health except for just taking care of individuals? So we just need to actually get back to like looking at people, looking at what they actually need, engaging in what I call radical common sense. That is my kind of philosophy. Like, let's just do the things that, if you're a diabetic and you don't know how to eat, let's get you a dietitian. If the dietitian doesn't help you, let's get you food. Because guess what? The dietitian and the food is less expensive than the diabetic ketoacidosis admission, the DKA admission to the hospital is. And again, that's what managed care should look like. Instead, we have care management, strangers taking care of strangers. So if you as a technologist can actually help enable companies like mine to show up more humanly, more in a more personalized way, to serve people in their moments of need, that will, I think, reinvigorate the industry around MA. Because you can be successful in MA. There's plenty of meat on the bones to be successful in MA. Are there issues with how CMS is introducing new policies? Of course there are, and we don't need to go into all of those. But this is one of the greatest opportunities we have to serve other people, and we have to take advantage of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Thank you. Before we close, Unmesh, you've got a last question on a final technical reflection.
Sachin, I'm hearing a lot about this. I disagree with it wholeheartly, but would love to get your view on it. Is AI going to change healthcare? I mean, this seems like the big data and that wave, but would love to hear how AI impacts healthcare,
Look,
which I've had, by the way,
look,
great conversations with Vinay about this and scan strategy. Would love to hear from you.
So I'll scoop. You'll hear it here first. Because it'll go live after we've announced the news. But we're announcing a new chief AI officer. His name is
wow.
Aman Bandari. He comes from the White House, CMS. He was at ORDI back in the days. You may have overlapped, John, with him.
Yeah.
He was at my team at Merck and then subsequently led the AI team at Vertex Pharmaceuticals. And he's coming to us and he's reporting to my chief people officer because the most important missing piece as we do AI transformation is actually changing how we think about the people and the work. This is a workforce transformation, not a technology transformation. Vinay is going to have a huge seat at the table. He's going to be a major partner to Aman, but this is not a CIO-led initiative. It has to be a chief people officer-led initiative. And I'll tell you a short story. We introduced, Cresta AI, which is a terrific tool to work with call centers to help better manage call center activities. And what happened is that 3 years into the implementation, we still hadn't changed how we ran our call centers.
Mm.
That we didn't use the tools and capabilities that were introduced to actually do the work in fundamentally different ways. So to really move AI, you have to move people. You have to change people and you have to enable people. And, again, I think there's going to be these transactional functions where you're going to replace people. There'll be some of that. But the real ROI is going to come from making the work smarter and more intelligent. But you're going to need to actually lead a major workforce transformation. We're taking our entire directors and above offline for 2 days in April. We're bringing in Bob Wachter, who is at UCSF, one of the leading thinkers on AI in
Yeah.
medicine. We're bringing in Ankit Patel, who's a professor at Rice and advisor to SCAN. We've got Aman, who's going to be speaking. And then we've got our entire HR team. And we're going to talk about how we're going to do this as a company. But the biggest mistake I think you can make is doing this entirely through the lens of technology, because technologists alone don't change companies. It's technology and then the people transformation that's actually going to do it. And, the truth is we can introduce as many, cool tools and widgets, but unless we're actually changing the hearts and minds, we're never going to win this.
Thank you, Sachin. As always,
Yeah.
it's just such a pleasure to have you. And we're really grateful for both your honesty and your perspective in this conversation.
I had a lot of fun. It was great to be with you both, and we'll hopefully all talk soon.
Thanks, man. And thank you to everyone listening to Curitics Conversations. You can follow us on YouTube, Podcast Bean, Apple Music, and Spotify.
Yeah.
Thanks so much again,
Can't
Sachin.
All right.
wait for this episode to come out.
Thanks
Thank
a lot.